Hello students, welcome to our first video in our usage unit. Today's topic is subject and verb agreement, and our goal for today is to choose the correct verb when given a tricky subject. So we're going to cover several instances with subject and verb agreement and talk about tips and strategies to choose the correct verb. Now for the most part, you understand the concept of subject and verb agreement, but we have to talk about some tricky, difficult situations today. So the rule that you're already familiar with is that a verb must agree in number, meaning singular or plural, with its subject. That means singular subjects take singular verbs. Now remember, these are verbs that end in S. It's the opposite of the noun rule. A verb that ends in S, the S means singular. A verb that does not end in S is a plural verb. So a plural subject will take a plural verb, and that would be a verb that does not end in S. So here are some examples. For example, one, Cindy is the subject, singular, so we would say is, it ends in S, and it is a singular verb. In the second sentence, children, plural, and so we're going to take the plural verb are, the one that does not end in S. Now, the one tricky situation we need to talk about is when words come between the subject and verb. And the rule that we're going to work with is to eliminate prepositional and appositive phrases to determine the true subject of a sentence. So, for example, the first sentence says, one of the files were ruined. Now, of the files is a prep phrase, so I'm going to get rid of it, which means one is the subject, one is singular, so I'm going to say was for the verb. It ends in S, it's also singular. In the second sentence, the women in my car were all asleep. In my car is a prep phrase, so I'm going to get rid of it, which means women is the subject, more than one, so women is plural, and I'm going to take the plural verb that does not end in S, were. In the last sentence, Jessica, the best speaker in forensics, are my friend. I'm going to cross off the appositive phrase, the best speaker in forensics, which leaves me with Jessica, which is a singular subject. So I'm going to say is for the verb, the singular verb that ends in S. Now, another situation that can become really tricky is when the subject of the sentence is an indefinite pronoun. Now, the rule that goes along with indefinite pronouns is that singular indefinite pronouns take singular verbs, while plural indefinite pronouns take plural verbs. Now, this list that you see, you've seen it before. You need to pause this screen and write down each list. When you're done, move on to the next screen. Now let's take a look at some indefinite pronoun examples. In the first sentence, each of the girls have a pretty prom dress. I'm going to cross off the prep phrase of the girls, which means each is my subject. Now if I say each, that really is saying each one, and it is singular. If you review your list of indefinite pronouns that are singular, each is on there. So when I say each, I need to choose a singular verb. Has ends in S, it is singular. This is a situation where it might not sound right to you, but is correct to say each of the girls has a pretty prom dress. In the second sentence, I'm going to cross off of my students because that's a prep phrase. Several is the subject. Several is one of the words that is always going to be a plural indefinite pronoun. So I need to choose the plural verb want, the one that does not end in S. In the next sentence, of my time is a prep phrase, some is the subject. But some is on the list of indefinite pronouns that can be singular or plural, all, any, more, most, none, and some. If a word can be either singular or plural, an indefinite pronoun can be singular or plural, you still have to look at the prep phrase to determine what it's referring to and whether that item is singular or plural. So when I say some of what? Time, which is singular, and then I would choose the singular verb in the sentence, the one that ends in S, is. In the last one, none of my activities are easy to coordinate. Of my activities is a prep phrase, none is the subject. However, it's on the list of words that can be singular or plural, so when I say none of what? Activities is plural, so I need to say are, the plural verb. Now, the next type of tricky subject is a compound subject, and a compound subject are two subjects or more joined by or, nor, or and. And the rule that we're going to talk about is a compound subject joined by and usually requires a plural verb. However, there is an exception. If the compound subject is naming a singular item, then it would take a singular verb, and we'll take a look at an example here. All right, the first sentence, the author and the movie producer are going to work together on the next Hunger Games. So I see author and I see movie producer joined by the conjunction and. This is two people, so this makes it plural. So I would choose the plural verb, are. In the second sample, rhythm and blues are a music style that developed in the South. This sentence tells us that rhythm and blues is a style, which is singular. So even though you have these two subjects joined by and, it's really one item because it's one style of music. So I would choose the singular verb is, the one that ends in S. Now, the second half of the subject about, or the rule about compound subjects is that if a compound subject is joined by or nor, the verb agrees only with the subject closest to it. So another way to think of this is that when you see or nor, ignore everything before. I'll repeat that in case you want to write it down for a tip. If you see or nor, ignore everything before. So in the first example, the directors or the author are in charge of choosing the actresses. I see or, I cross off everything before, which means author is my subject. Author is singular, so I would choose is, the singular verb. Now let's take a look at the next sentence. The authors or the directors are in charge of choosing the actresses. I see or, cross off everything before. That means directors is the subject, which is plural, more than one director. So I'm going to choose are, the plural verb in that one. Now the next type of tricky subject involves numerical amounts. And the rule is that numerical amounts that refer to single units take singular verbs. A fractional number can take either a singular or plural verb depending on what it refers to in the sentence. So let's take a look at some examples. In the first one, 17 years and 10 months is my numerical amount. It's one chunk of time, so we treat it as if it's singular, and then we take the singular verb was. In the next example, it says 9/10 of the Guinness Book of Records are about people. First of all, of the Guinness Book of Records, prep phrases, so not really the subject, 9/10 is a singular amount. However, it's fractional. So if you have a fractional amount, you still have to look at what it's referring to in the prep phrase that follows it. 9/10 of what? It's referring to 9/10 of the book, which is singular. And that means I would say singular is. In the next example, half of the class are absent for the field trip today. All right, this one has a prep phrase of the class, which means half is my subject, but half is also fractional. It's half. So you have to say half of what? And it's referring to class, which is a singular unit. So I would say is absent today, the singular verb. In the second example, again, prep phrase to get rid of the students. Half is the subject, however, it's fractional, so I say half of what? Half of the students is plural. In this case, we would say are absent, the plural verb. Now, the next example involves a tricky subject known as collective nouns, and you've learned these before. Collective nouns name groups of people or things. They're words like flock, jury, and family. Now, the rule is that if a collective noun agrees or does the same thing, it's treated as if it's singular. However, if a collective noun disagrees or does different things, it is treated as if it's plural. So let's take a look at a couple examples. Jury is the subject. It is a collective noun. It looks singular. However, I have to ask myself, what is the jury doing? Are they all in agreement or are they all doing the same thing? This sentence says the jury have come to its decision. So in this sentence, it's telling me that they're unanimous. They agree. They've come to one decision. And there's a context clue that I would use in this sentence. It's is singular, which tells me the sentence is treating the jury as if it's singular also. So I would say has, the singular verb. In the second sentence, jury is the subject again, but the sentence is different. It says the jury fights over their differing opinions. Two things going on here. First of all, they differ in opinion. If they differ in opinion, they separate out and become plural. Also, the sentence is telling me that it's treating jury as if it's plural because it says there, which is a plural pronoun. So I want the plural verb, fight. And I know it sounds strange, but it is correct to say the jury fight over their differing opinions. All right, another tricky subject involves the words every and many a. The rule is that if a noun is preceded by the words every or many a, it is always singular. All right, let's take a look at an example. Many a new parent thinks the first few days with a newborn are the hardest. I see many a in front of the subject, the noun parent. And remember, the rule says if many a is in front of it, you always treat it as if it's singular. So I'm going to choose thinks. Many a new parent thinks, the singular verb. Now, in the second example, it says every student and teacher takes his or her seat at the assembly. Now, this one's a little bit tricky. I see the word every in front, which says in the rule you always treat those nouns as if they're singular. It sounds plural, though, to say student and teacher, but you're saying every single student, every single teacher, every single one, which means it's actually singular, and I need the singular verb takes in that example. So again, every, many a, treat that noun as if it's always singular. All right, our last example involves subordinate clauses. And the rule is when the relative pronoun who, which, or that is the subject of a subordinate clause, its number is determined by its antecedent, which is the noun preceding the relative pronoun. So first of all, in the example sentences, we should isolate the subordinate clauses, and they're going to begin with the words who, which, or that. So in the first sentence, the football players on our team who are injured include Dylan, Matt, and Bobby. So the subordinate clause starts with who, and then I need to complete the clause. Who are injured is my subordinate clause. Now, I also know that that part is subordinate because the rest of the sentence makes a independent clause. The football players on our team include Dylan, Matt, and Bobby. All right, my subordinate clause starts with the word who, which is the subject of the clause. But how do I know if who is singular or plural? How do I know if I should say is or are injured? Well, I need to look at what the pronoun who is referencing. It says the football players who are injured. So I'm going to say who is referencing players, which is plural. So I'm going to choose the plural verb are. Let's take a look at the second example and find the subordinate clause. The football players from the school that always beat or beats us are much bigger than our players. So first of all, where is the subordinate clause? Starts with the word that. That always beat or beat us is the subordinate clause. And the question is, when I say that, what is it referring to? What is it referencing? What is the antecedent for the subject that? It's the school. The school is singular, so I'm going to choose the singular verb beats in this one.